Hey, hey.
Hello, hello.
Remember the old days when things wouldn't work and you couldn't hear me and then you couldn't hear you and the stream was off? Remember the good old days? Now
Yeah.
it's like a well-oiled machine, man. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
we're just humming. Oops, I still have my AirPod in though. See, we're not perfect.
Lock and change in 2 weeks.
What's in 2 weeks?
I said lock and change in 2 weeks.
That's right.
Yeah.
2 weeks. Well, yes, we've grown up. Yeah, and the audience is getting bigger, and especially on Rumble, which is great. And it looks like there's actual people on Rumble. Looks like Rumble can start to compete with YouTube, which might change the world more than anything. You know, when YouTube gets displaced as the dominant medium for video sharing, game on. When Rumble, which is basically committed to free speech, you know, you can put anything on the videos you want on Rumble. It's going to be serious game changer in public discourse and politics and the culture. I mean, until of course the FBI comes to the doors of Rumble, and that guy, the current CEO of Rumble, just became a billionaire. I think he did an IPO. I think it went public. And so the FBI is going to come knocking, and they're going to tell him to shut people up like us, and then we'll have to find another alternative. But at least for the moment, it looks like we might, for the very first time, have a legitimate free speech alternative to one of the major social media platforms. Mm-hmm. It looks like it. This is amazing. So
yeah, more importantly than that, we forgot to announce it last week, but we are offering Tucker the third mic position on this show should he decide to bring his talents
for here. Almost the same amount.
Yeah,
almost. I mean, I'm going to say it's competitive. It's a competitive offer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm just, we got into the industry a little bit later than Bet David. Is that his name? Ben David?
Oh, Patrick Bet David at Value Payment. Yeah.
Yeah. Our offer is just coming in just a hair under his.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, we're obviously smarter and more interesting. And he knows nothing about Black culture. And this is where you come to learn about Black culture. Everyone knows this. So, yes, Tucker. And Tucker needs to learn more about Black culture and Afro-Cuban rhythms and the like. The greatness of Marvin Gaye. The things we normally talk about. Tucker's, he's got a whiteness problem. And he knows that. And he can learn from us. So yes, Tucker, even though you won't make quite as much as you will with PB, what is it again?
Patrick Bet David.
EBD. You'll have a better time and you'll be way more cool. And you'll be able to stride among the people as one of them, an actual populist. See, this is his problem. No one ever believed that he was a populist because he used to wear a fucking bow tie, and he's like the preppiest dude on earth. Even though he's in his 50s, he still basically has the vibe of an actual prep school kid from the 1980s. I guess preppies don't really exist anymore, do they? Like, it was a thing when I was growing up.
Well, I mean, like Charlie Kirk has that same look.
Oh, Yeah, but it's not in the 80s. It was like a big deal, like because it was actually sort of cool, very in a very perverse way. Being preppy was cool then.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody had to wear Izods to be cool for the youth. But no,
as a general, I think when the shift from money went from finance to when it went from finance to tech, and it became cool to wear sweatpants, I think the standards dipped precipitously.
And running shoes.
Yep.
You nailed it, dude. That's exactly what it is. That's right. And you see it or saw it most clearly here in San Francisco. Oh my God. T-shirts and running shoes every day, all day long, no matter what. Sam Bankman-Fried, the most offensive thing about that dude, stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from people is one thing, but appearing on stage in shorts and a T-shirt, like doing a formal thing. He wasn't rapping. He was doing some formal business thing or political thing. I forget many, right? He was on many huge events with like thousands of people in the audience.
Oh yeah, it would be like a bunch of celebrities, like Tom Brady and his wife, and then it would just be this frumpy dude in a soggy T-shirt with like grease stains on it.
Hasn't gotten a haircut since last year. Mm-hmm. I mean, serious, like Jufro to the max. What the? And like you get away with that as a tech bro. I mean, of course, being a billionaire helps ease some of the tension there with people around that. But yeah, if you were broke, you wouldn't get away with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. But yes, so tech did many wonderful things for humanity. Well, created the greatest invention in the history of the world, for one thing, the internet as we know it. But they've also done some bad stuff, and the destruction of style, and I should say masculine style in particular, just utter destruction. All men now dress like boys. All men dress like some version of a tech bro or like his working class counterpart, the one with the flat brim baseball hat. You're one of all American men, regardless of color, look like one of those. They all dress like they're 20 years old. And it's, Camille Paglia's written about this, actually. She's one of the things she's right about, I think. It's a real tragedy. It's terrible because, there's nothing to look at anymore. Looking at people is, and then during COVID, my God, you didn't even have their faces to look at. But there's nothing to look at in terms of fashion, almost nothing. Mm-hmm. And that's true in places like San Francisco, which used to be a style capital. New York still has people who look good and pay attention to how they dress and don't dress like children all the time. But every other city, LA is certainly like that. It's terrible. Seattle, I think Boston's like that. I don't know. It's I liked it when people dressed like grown-ups who cared and try to have a look, and everybody had sort of like their own different style, or they belong to their own style category, right? That's kind of gone now. You don't hear about, I mean, there's goth, I guess, is like the one thing you might hear about, but very few people do that.
Yeah, it used to be hype beast culture. That was like 5 years ago, where everybody was trying to be the first in line to buy something with a brand on it, and that was its own look. I've noticed that trucker hats are back in style for kids. Like,
yeah, again, it's all sort of lowbrow. Well, nothing wrong with lowbrow, but that's all there is. Like, in other words, we have perfected lowbrow culture. That seems to me what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I love lowbrow. I mean, my book is a celebration of lowbrow culture in history. But I want more, mm-hmm. And I want so it's especially terrible for men. Men are just have lost control entirely. I mean, they just don't have any. When's the last time you saw a tie in public, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that used to be every day. You would see many, no matter what you did during the day, you would see several men with ties on anywhere in America. I mean, when I was a kid, that even in hippie Berkeley, I would see men in ties every single day, no matter where I was, no matter what I was doing. And certainly everybody on TV had ties on, and I'm not saying I want to go back to that, and I don't want to go back to the ubiquity of the business suit and that sort of as a rule, because the business suit has its own problems in terms of homogenizing humanity, right? That's what his intention was. So no, but I just want, damn.
Yeah.
I want, here it is, to bring it back full circle, Michael, sorry. Mm-hmm. And then I'll let you talk. What I want is for everyone to dress like you're going to a black church on Sunday. That's it. The way people dress in a black church on Sunday, which is just an explosion of expression and style and all that. So that's what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm.
The best thread I saw on men's fashion on Twitter was from Cat Girl Kulak, I believe she wrote it. Mm. And it was basically saying that good men's fashion comes from functionality. It's the combination of functionality and style. Like everybody wore suits back in the day. Partially, you got the vest. There's like a layer to it. Like there's the hat. There's the layers. There's a vest. There's suspenders to keep the pants up. There's a functionality to it because like you'd have to walk a long distance, cars weren't that common necessarily, or like certain work wears where you've got, a jacket and blah, 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 blah. But like the idea that you have to brave the elements and that everything serves a purpose, like there's a natural order to your get up. And a lot of the decline in men's fashion is we're sitting in air conditioned rooms all day. And it looks like, we could just be lounging around in our PJs,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So men's fashion has totally always been determined principally by functionality. So the rise of blue jeans, for instance, famously came out of, workwear for men. It's what coal miners used to wear. And the business suit. Yeah, which is a fascinating story, by the way. And my friend, Michael Zakim, who I went to graduate school with, he's written the history on this. It's an amazing history. Michael is a Marxist, but he's one of the really good Marxists, and he shows that it's a cultural question, of course, but it's about um, putting the Puritan values onto capitalism. It's about imposing Puritan values on emergent capitalism. The business suit starts right when capitalism starts in the United States, and they wanted uniformity. They wanted all the men who were participating in this new thing to be similar and to not show their bodies also. Now, the great irony, of course, is that the business suit became like a total object of sexual attraction for women, but that was not intended. But yes, it's, yeah, the traditional masculine role is of worker and provider, the person in the public sphere, the one who's largely defined by his work, the one who's expected not only to work but to be proud of it. These are things, of course, that are declining, which is maybe not all bad thing, because those are not fabulous things to live with as men, right? To just always have to define your life around your work. And in America, it's been especially horrible, because in no other country, when you meet someone, is the first question every time, what do you do? In America, we're the only country that does that. When you meet someone for the first time, the first question for Americans is always, oh, so what do you do? What's your name? What do you do? Right? So, yeah, I mean, that's the Puritan work ethic, and men's fashion, unfortunately, has always flowed from that. And therefore, it's been, generally speaking, way more limited, way more restricted, repressive, less expressive, less colorful, less deliberately sexy or sexual. But yeah, so anyway, but all sorts of ironies abound, because that very thing, that kind of like masculine it's repressive in a way. Yeah, that sort of stolid masculinity, that turns out to be a turn on for a lot of women. So,
yeah.
So what are you gonna do?
And with that going to church aesthetic, you should subscribe to the ESPN SEC channel. Yeah, all the commentators are dressed to the nine every single day.
Oh,
and
Jesus.
there are
College football in the Deep South. Yeah, right.
And some of the most beautiful Southern accents for all the commentary. It's worth it.
Oh my God. I love the South so much. I miss it all the time. I'm always keeping an eye on it. If there's ever an opportunity, I would totally move there. But in part for that reason, like there's so much less repression in the South than up here.
You brought up Marvin Gaye earlier. Did you follow the Ed Sheeran lawsuit?
I just saw that, and I listened to. I immediately clicked on Sheeran's song. I was like, "Wait, what?" I didn't ever know, because so let's get it on. I have said for my entire adult life, I believe is the greatest popular music song of all time. Like it's the number. There's just nothing that is better than that. So I've listened to it thousands of times, and when I heard that, I was like, "Wait, what?" Ed Sheeran has never sounded like Marvin Gaye, and I turned it on. I was like, I still couldn't hear it. Is it the same key or something? Like
same chord progression. There's melodic
chord
fragments.
progression.
Yeah,
really
harmony. Yeah,
like non-musician's ear can't even hear that.
Yeah, and like it's a similar tempo. I would say same chord progression, similar tempo. And it's a ballad. And so, like, if you change the instrumentation, like you could sing Ed Sheeran's song over the instrumentation of Let's Get It On and vice versa, and it would fit. But there's a lot of substantial differences that your ear could obviously take. Like
I mean, if I didn't listen to them back to back, I just listened to Sheeran, and I hadn't listened to Let's Get It On in a while, whatever. But if I listen, I don't know, I just couldn't hear it. I don't know. What do you think? Is it bassless, or is there?
I think it's bassless. Precisely because, I mean, the two things that can be copywritten by American law. First of all, I think all copyright law is baseless. But
right, you're coming from the anti-IP position here.
Yeah,
God, I haven't had that debate in a while. That's a good one.
Beyond that, the only things that are copywritten by American law are words and melodies. So the harmony and the rhythm and the style, which is what a lot of the Marvin Gaye lawsuits have hinged upon. If you remember Blurred Lines, Pharrell and Robin Thicke over Got to Give It Up.
You can't copyright rhythm.
You can't copyright rhythm, which is why
white supremacy.
It's white supremacy. Yep.
Wow, man. Yep. The man, even there, even in music copyright law, the man has his boot on your neck.
Which is why drummers never get royalties. And which is why the singer and the
white
guitar
supremacy. Yep, there you go. Because drums are only played by black men and wiggas. We all know this, like you and me.
Yep.
Do people know that I have a career as a drummer? Have we said this?
Man, if they're fans, they should know. Yeah.
This is a show about drummers right here. Right. My brother right here is a professional Afro-Cuban percussionist and drummer. And I am a former, believe it or not, professional drummer. I was paid $40 at a nightclub in Dayton, Ohio in 1988, playing drums for a mock heavy metal band similar to Spinal Tap. But we were like the edgier, newer, younger version of Spinal, at least for the 1980s. We were like weird kids. And then the guys I played in that band with went on to basically found grunge metal. I mean, not grunge, grunge rock in Seattle. They immediately moved to Seattle. This is the late 80s, right before grunge took off. And they were there having all these bands and huge bands. But anyway, I played, but I was terrible. I never really got down the separation, all that stuff. I sucked. They were always telling me to speed up. But I had a name, and I dressed, believe it or not, I dressed as a heavy metal drummer.
Dope.
So the thing is, but they recruited me because they knew of my history, my background as a black man. Yeah. So that I'm just saying, this is clearly white supremacy. They're taking this copyright thing. It's an attack once again on our black brothers and those of us who wish to be like them.
Well, yeah, it's a societal bias. It's a total Eurocentric perspective on music. Yeah.
Well, we've been joking for 5 minutes, or I've mostly, but for 5 minutes now. But like, this is true.
Yeah.
Actually, it is white supremacy. I'm not playing. Like, this is, yeah, what you just said. That it's a Eurocentric view. Rhythm has always been considered to be subordinate to melody and within Europe, European music. Inferior. Fun. I mean, they've said it, right? I mean, all the great classical composers basically said this.
Well, I'm not sure if they explicitly said that, but the thing is, the Western canon comes from the tradition of like Gregorian chant and church music, where it's suspended. Well, originally, you're singing along to the line, and then as it evolves, you stack harmonies on top of it, and rhythm is not really tracked in a super complex way. I mean, the rhythms are complex, but that's not the driving factor of the music. It's all about speaking, the gospel. It's all about the words and the melody and how you color that. So rhythm is entirely incidental.
We could do an entire class just on this right here. Because I'm thinking of the mind-body duality. In Greek philosophy and the Bible, Judeo-Christian tradition, what we still live with, right? So the mind, church music, original church music that you're saying was aimed at evoking soaring, like ascension, or up, exactly, upward with the mind, right? It's very much, you feel it's very cerebral also, right? It's very heady and cerebral. And the rhythm, like especially African-based rhythm, goes down. Goes the other direction. It goes to your groin, frankly, and and your hips, and where the sexy stuff is, where the body is most represented. So if you read the Bible, it's an attack on the body as the source of all that is bad and evil and sinful. Same within the ancient Greek philosophers like Plato. And then from there, Western civilization has just kept reiterating this mind-body duality where the mind is good and the body is terrible. And then they started mapping on these different groups, like Africans got mapped onto the body and Europeans got mapped onto the mind. Mind, white, good, European, rational, discipline, that's the mind. And then body, African, black, rhythm, sex. And all the other nasty, sensual things. So so there you go. And now we have this bias where copyright law doesn't protect rhythm because it's always been associated with the down and the dirty and the black.
And a lot of great drummers have died penniless or have had to work a lot harder than they needed to after playing on hit records and after giving their touch and their essence to these records that would not be remembered without them. And a lot of them never got the royalties that they deserved for them because of. That's structural racism right there. That's institutional racism. Fuck redlining. This is this is real institutional racism.
Yep. Whiteness, believe it or not, is still very much in play, even though it's been like the concept has been just like distorted and abused and just like thrown everywhere by these idiots on college campuses. No, just like this is one example. This is and what you just did is that's critical race theory, my friend.
Yeah,
like that's exactly what Kimberly Crenshaw would say about this. So I've been saying this for a long time. Don't throw out the CRT baby with the bathwater. Like it's the shitty interpretations and actualizations of it on these campuses. It sucks. It's not the original theory. The original theory is pretty powerful, actually, which is that there's these vestiges of ways of thinking about race that are like have seeped into things that aren't explicitly racialized, right? Things like that, like music, right? Or music copyright. It's not like you hear those words, you don't start thinking about race. But the people who worked inside music copyright law and wrote the law had these unconscious assumptions about race and all the things associated with each race, right? And so when they hear rhythm, they don't even have to think it. It's sort of instinctive by this point. They feel it as something lower, lesser, dirtier, darker. You feel me? And then, right. So that's not worthy of copyright. Only melody is.
Yeah.
Right.
Man, it's funny. Somebody had been commenting that you haven't aged well, that your take hasn't aged well necessarily. In that,
wait, hold on. Like this has to be clarified immediately.
Yeah,
I haven't aged well, or my take hasn't aged well.
I think. I mean, they're not super precise in the YouTube comment section, but this is what I took it as. Like, it's very you really have to like parse this take very closely. Like, you often assume the voice of the racist white voice of American history in order to articulate it, and it sounds a lot like it's coming from you. Like when you when you ascribe African traditions as sexual or dirty or nasty, like you really have to parse it because like for example, there are very
wait. First of all. Yeah. So what I was saying was not, I wasn't saying anything about what I think.
I know. Yeah.
Okay. I was quoting basically what others have said about, but the thing is, they're largely correct. And you're right. That's where, I believe they are largely correct. I just don't think those are bad things. I think sex and sensuality and all that stuff that's associated with rhythm, I think those are great things. Right. So the stereotypes, if they're true, are compliments.
Kamasi Hill, who we co-taught with,
just thinking about him,
would describe a lot of these Afro-diasporic cultures as containing a celebration of the body. He would use more beautiful language to describe some of these things.
Yeah, he and I agree on this.
And it was hilarious for me learning this stuff because I was introduced to a lot of these cultures and a lot of these ideas and practices in a university. So it was hilarious in a sterilized post-Title IX world to hear these things described. Like, it took me years of my own research to actually figure out what they were talking about.
Because Kamasi and I, and this is definitely one of the main reasons neither one of us are teaching in a university, even though he has a PhD too, is because we're just about the only people we know of. There's Shane Lee, who actually has a job at University of Houston, who does argue the same thing, but that man, Black culture, Black popular culture, Black working class culture, has been way more sensual, sexual, more about the body, less ashamed of the body. Right. I mean, it's just look at it. Like, really, there's no dancing. You don't see dancing. You don't see like better, more sensual dancing over there than you do among white people. Like, come on. So, now here's the thing that people forget or don't know in the first place is that the assumption that almost all Americans have that stuff like sexy dancing is bad or worse than mathematics, say.
Yeah, or a sign of low intelligence.
Or a sign of low intelligence, low character, low discipline. That's another thing, right? Bad. It's just bad, right? And mathematics is good, right? That is white supremacy. Now, meaning that your assumptions come from, it's true, Northern Europe. I mean, and North America and the United States and Canada. I mean, it's those ideas about the body and the mind are totally European. You just don't see them in Africa and Latin America and even in Asia. Not that way. You know, they don't do that thing. It comes from Plato, who invented this idea of the mind and body. And then the Bible took it and spread it. But the mind body piece of that only stuck in Northern Europe. It's not even in Southern Europe. Like the Italians and the French don't believe this bullshit. They have way less shame about their bodies. Body, and not physical bodies, but what the body represents. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you know this if you spend a minute in Italy or France. I mean, they're just way less ashamed.
Yeah. And also, like, there's like a parallel to the like, especially with the spiritual practices and their beliefs. There's a parallel to the like the Greek pantheon of gods, in that, like, all the stories about the Greek pantheon of gods are just fighting and fucking. Like, it's just totally wild, crazy, like, story. Yeah.
Right. And, right. Yeah. We were talking about Romans, the book of Romans, in the Bible class last night. And it's an amazing document, by the way. And it's pretty short. Everyone should read it at some point. But it's sort of like the origin of Puritanism, the origin of the ascetic doctrine in Christianity. Is kind of like right there. Paul writes this in the Epistle to the Romans, and several points he describes the behavior of the Romans at the time. And he wrote this in about like the 1st century sometime. And it's just hilarious. I mean, it's just these long lists, you know, of everything except bestiality. I mean, just fornication off the charts, just like, you know, licentiousness and drunkenness, and I forget, just every kind of licentious ill. Yeah. So anyway, Christianity came along, disciplined the place, got them to clean up their act and believe and sacrifice their desires for a higher being, for a higher, greater good. And they convinced a few people. But anyway, let's do some news, man.
Yeah. But again, it's just hilarious to be in a college classroom where you can't even describe, like, post-feminism, like gender, post-trans ideology, post-Me Too, post-Title IX, just anything at all approaching sexuality that isn't a very specific modern.
Well, yeah, I didn't say this. It is why I got fired from Barnard.
Yeah.
I mean, they told me it's that I talked about Black sexuality in a way that wasn't like trying to hide it or pretend it didn't exist, or that Black people were just as puritanical as everybody else, you know, which is what they always try to pretend. It's so fucking funny. No, I laid it out there, and they were like, nope, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. We don't want your kind.
And yeah, it's in that, and like, especially as you know, Black ways of thought and being are being subsidized by the university. They're being sterilized and robbed of their entire essence, you know.
Yeah. We flood the first half hour with race talk because there will be no more race talk, right? There's nothing. All the stories are pretty non-racial.
Right? I want to play this clip just to bring it back to Tucker real quick. Media Matters did.
That's racial.
Yeah. Well, Media Matters dug up all of Tucker's old like clips.
Yeah, right. Made him look good.
Yeah, and all of these clips and all these text messages made him look like a real relatable human being.
Totally. Totally.
It was like, this is just like the puritanical, like, liberal mindset that like this offhand hilarious comments might.
So wait, set it up though. Like, so this is Media Matters was this liberal hit sort of what are they like? They're a media hit.
Oh, it's a Clinton funded media hit job thing. It's like a media watchdog group that
right. So they hate Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, it's like a research think tank.
There's a bunch of those with the same very similar name, but some are right wing and some are left wing. So it's hard to remember. Media Matters is the left wing one here. Okay.
Yeah. So all these clips of Tucker before the show, while the camera is supposedly off, while he's getting his makeup done, and he says just completely unconscionable things that make the workplace an unsafe place to be.
Right.
You wouldn't? Okay. I'm not, you know what? I'm not qualified on that score, I will say. But his girlfriend was kind of yummy. Just kidding. In case this is being pulled off the bird. Yeah, the bird. Hey, Media Matters for America. Go fuck yourself. That's the first thing I want to say tonight. Second thing is, totally kidding. I don't even know what his girlfriend looks like. And if I did, I would not find her yummy.
Yeah. And this is what's being used to take him down, like, and paint the idea that he created a misogynistic workplace that was unsafe for his coworkers.
He thought someone was sexually attractive.
Yeah.
What was I saying about the mind-body duality? Here's the funny irony is that today's liberals are the biggest inheritors, the greatest inheritors of the Puritan tradition that I've been talking about. Today's conservatives are way less puritanical, right? I mean, ever since Milo Yiannopoulos and Donald Trump came to town, conservatives have been the party. That's been the party town. No, but liberals and socialists, they're horrible. They absolutely ascetic. They judge all displays of ostentation and wealth. They're very puritanical about sex. Feminists are the worst. We know this about sex. But yeah, so Tucker is he's more like most of us. He's more like non-liberals who don't think it's evil to say you're sexually attracted to someone who's not even in the room, by the way.
Who he'd never met. He just hypothetically said somebody he works with might have an attractive girlfriend.
He wasn't saying to his producer, "You're yummy."
Yeah.
That would be a problem. I would probably fire that guy if I were his boss. But yeah, this is insane. And they know that it will appeal to their base, though, because they know liberals are puritanical as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that right-wingers have that liberals are all these hedonistic, Satanists is like so wrong. It's just, just empirically, it's just the opposite. And we know this statistically. We know that liberals are much more likely to have families, to be married, to have multiple children, to do the whole family thing, to stay married. They don't get divorced nearly as much. Like, I'm one of the very few people I know in my milieu, which is almost all liberal from New York and the West Coast, who got divorced. Like, I know all sorts of people who are parents. They're all still fucking married. They hate each other, but they're liberals, so they stay together.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, everyone, for saying that. Not all of you hate each other, just the liberals. No, just kidding. I don't know, man. You ever been around married couples who've been together for more than 10 years?
Oh, dude, this is hilarious. The next clip I'm about to
how many love each other a lot still, just saying.
The next clip, somebody captioned this next clip as "This is a married couple arguing."
Mm-hmm.
And it's there's a lot of these clips appearing right now just because of the social conversations that are happening, especially around the Jordan Neely case.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where white liberals confront homeless people, and like all of their assumptions get completely shattered when the homeless people tell them, "Yeah, we don't want your help. Stop bothering me."
Mm-hmm.
And this really speaks to what you're saying.
Yep.
On that,
paternalism comes next.
Mm-hmm. I'm not exactly sure where this is. I think this might be DC, but yeah.
I haven't seen this. I haven't seen this yet.
Oh, you haven't? Great.
No.
So yeah, this is a liberal.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Say no more.
Yeah, liberals behind.
I know what's gonna happen.
Yep.
Flipping me off, bro. Why are you taking my picture, bro? Because there should be housing for you. I don't want housing. Then what do you want? Just to sit here then? Yeah. My country, ain't it? Yeah, but this isn't sanitary. We all live here. What gives you more right than me?
Oh.
Look, what do you mean? You should want better for yourself.
Oh.
I like you like this. I like the fresh air. No, I got you, but we all have to. What if somebody's handicapped and they need to get by? They can't. They got 36.
Oh, that's why.
Somebody on a mobile bike can't get through here. So your freedom's more important than somebody else's. No, see, this is the problem. You think you're more important than somebody else.
Oh.
Talk to the homeless guy and hold up traffic. Maybe somebody's got to go to the hospital.
Holy my God.
That guy just expects. He just thinks that he is more important.
Is that real?
I think so. I don't know.
Sure? I don't want to jump too hard on it until I confirm that it's real, but I mean, if it's real, it is a very entertaining example of how liberals they place everyone in one of two categories, which is victim or oppressor. And this guy went like that from victim to oppressor in this guy's mind. As soon as he resists the narrative, and also that's what determines which one you are is how you perceive the narrative, right? About homelessness, about oppression, whatever it is, racism. So if you perceive it correctly, you're a victim. But since this gentleman did not perceive the narrative correctly, he must be an oppressor because you're only one or the other. Again, yeah, this mind-body thing is part of this addiction to binaries in Western thinking, by the way. And if you know anything about Eastern philosophy and religions, you know they're not binary the way that we are over here. And it's a real problem because, the gray zone gets lost and all the subtleties and nuances get lost. But yeah, so you're one or the other, bro. It's you are black or white, as it were. You are evil or good or evil. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as you say, I don't want your help, you're immediately oppressing somebody else. You're immediately. Yeah.
Like they can't just let you be, right? You either have to be saved or you have to be scorned.
Yep.
It's one or the other. They have to be in your business in one way or the other. They can't just be like, oh, you don't agree? Okay, go have a nice day. See you later. Like they have to chase you down and yell at you in the street. That's amazing. I hope it's real.
Yeah.
I hope it's real. I don't know.
Yeah. So, oh shoot. So the Bible class just wrapped up.
Oh my God, it was awesome.
Yeah, I think you might be more right than you even think about Christianity being the, I guess, root of progressivism.
Oh yeah.
In that, especially like the last session was on the epistles to Paul, from Paul, and how he was talking to the pagan world. And I've been listening to a lot of David Gornowski. You appeared on his show a while ago. Yeah. And his thing right now is that the pagan world and other religions see the world as it just is. Like there's an infinite cycle of death and rebirth, and the world just is how it is, if that makes sense. And then Christianity sort of interjected that and said there's actually something to aspire towards.
Yeah, right.
And from there, you get a linear sense of history as opposed to a circular sense of history. And that linear sense of history is progressivism. Like essentially it's the past is bad, the future is good, and dadgummit, we're going to make it happen.
Yeah, it's teleological. And they have to have causation too. There has to be this chain of events with causation, one thing causing the next, and it has to be also moving in the same direction. It's linear. In order so that they can seize it, conquer it, master it, and control it, right? Once it becomes this understandable chain, that's what history is, then you've already contained it and started to like analyze it and chop it up and put it through your mind and do all those things we do. Master it. It's an attempt to master all knowledge and meaning and history. Whereas, as you're saying, in the ancient world, many people didn't bother. They didn't need to. They were too busy living in the moment and quite possibly being happier. Way less productive, perhaps, but happier. Something to ponder.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. But you are a defender of modernity in a lot of senses, in that you appreciate being on this screen right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a celebrant of modernity. I would say I don't really defend it too much, but like, yeah, I mean, I would if I was pushed. Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. The internet. I mean, boy, do I have mixed, but everyone has mixed feelings about the internet. I don't know. It's like same with the phone, same with the car, same with the, everyone has airplanes. We all have really mixed feelings about all those things, right? We love them and really don't like them. And, I don't know. I mean, within the world I live in now, the next technological breakthrough, I will welcome it. It will be I will think of it as a good thing, compared to how I'm living right now, it will be an improvement, right? But compared to how we might have been living, I don't know, 100, 200, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, maybe not, I don't know. Maybe it's not as good. Maybe people were more relaxed in, at the time when the Bible was being written. Maybe they had less anxiety. I kind of bet they did. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. They had shorter lives. My friend Christopher Ryan, the author of Sex at Dawn, has a very compelling argument about this. And he is absolutely convinced, and he's written a whole book about it. But yeah, we are definitely less happy now than we were in ancient times. And pre-civilized time. His book is about civilization, actually. Civilization has made people miserable and unhappy and living lives that are not as fulfilling as in pre-civilization. He and I have debated that on my show, and that's a great conversation. If anyone wants to look up that episode, it's from a few years ago on Unregistered with Christopher Ryan. That's like one of the better conversations we had. So yeah, I don't know, man. And this is sort of full circle again. This is also white supremacy in a sense, because my way of thinking about that is absolutely from Northern Europe and America. The embrace, the sort of like this teleological view of history, as you were saying.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, you are Mr. Russell. Like, be proud of your heritage, son. Like, own it.
I didn't see this. This is Camille's whole thing. Camille Foster's whole thing. He's so right about this. And I never even thought about it until he said it. It's like this whole race pride thing is the most perverse, stupid thing ever. It's like, what, you had something to do with what your grandparents did? Wait, really? And they always go back further than that, right? And it's not just black people, by the way. Like every Irish person and Italian person I've ever known, they always say some shit about their ancestors, right? I'm like, what? Or what we did, or what we accomplished, or what my people did. Like, no, wait, you weren't even born. You were nothing. You had nothing to do with inventing pasta. Nothing, not a thing. So race pride's ridiculous. And Camille's other point, which is also perfect, is that, okay, so you're proud of all the things that your people did before you existed. Well, do you also get the shame for all the bad stuff they did? Because if we're talking about Irish and Italians and black people, there's quite a few things that have been done that you might not be proud of. So,
and then, man,
I speak. This is part Irish. I'm part Irish, by the way, and I'm actually,
yeah.
And then terrible, bad people, man. The Irish, violent, dirty, drunken.
There's the big dialogue right now I see happening on Twitter, or at least the people I'm following. David Gornowski as a Girardian, and he had a conversation with this guy Uber Boyo, who's a great Nietzschean essayist, I guess, or a Substackian on Twitter. And Uber Boyo's argument basically is that the Nietzschean Übermensch, the great men throughout history who act on behalf of their own interests, the selfish people that you kind of like, are actually way more virtuous than the self-sacrificing Christians, and that there's no virtue in being weak, and that you get a lot better results when people act for their own interests and are strong and can defend themselves.
Yeah. I mean, it all depends on, I hate using that word in a way that's unqualified virtue, because it all depends on what your values are. If you value stability and security, then being Christian and having Christian neighbors is the way to go. If you value freedom, curiosity, exploration, if you are not ashamed of sexual pleasure, things like that, licentiousness generally, then you probably shouldn't be a Christian, or at least think really hard about it. But yeah, so, and it depends on, so
here, can I make this practical?
So virtue is defined by your values. So if you value the latter set of things that I just said, then yes, an ethic of selfishness is the way to go. It's, I hate Ayn Rand, but this is similar to her point.
Okay. So Jordan Neely is the big story that everybody's talking about right now.
Yeah, thank you. Good. Yes.
The New York subway. It's not uncommon nowadays for anybody who's ridden the subway to have people loudly shouting threats and being up in people's faces for the past, I don't know, I guess ever since COVID, but for a long time, you've been seeing videos of very, very scary situations on the subway of people getting up in people's faces and assaults. There's been rapes. There's been people thrown onto the tracks and run over. This has been a huge, huge problem. This guy, Jordan Neely, had 40 plus prior convictions, I think. And Yeah, long history with this guy. There's a video of this altercation taking place where you just see the chokehold that a 24-year-old white Marine put on this guy after he was being threatening, apparently. There's another video where you see more context, where you see other people helping restrain this Jordan Neely guy. People of various races contributing to restraining Jordan Neely, various onlookers of various races not interfering. This incident has been called, it's like another Kyle Rittenhouse moment, in that it's been galvanized by Ayanna Pressley as a representative, as a lynching.
AOC.
AOC, which is funny. Somebody quote tweeted her and said, you wanted more community policing. This is what community policing looks like, which is a great take.
Right. Yeah, I know. I saw that. Yeah.
So
there's no video of the actual choking, though, right?
No, there's video of the choking. That's what's going viral.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Okay.
Just the rear naked choke. I'm not sure if you see. I haven't watched it to where like you see the life leave his body. I don't know if that happens, but.
Well, I guess does the video include what led up to it? Like the minute?
No.
The minute. Oh, well, that's what I want to see, actually. It's not so much the choking. I want to see what was right before that.
Yeah.
Well, for a minute, like I want to see like a couple minutes, because apparently he was doing a lot of crazy shit for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. So I lived in New York City for 17 years. I have taken the subway in New York City at all times of day, thousands of times. I know what it is to be on the subway. I know the subway really well. I know the culture of New York City really well, the street culture really well. I lived in many different neighborhoods. I mean, I know that city in this way. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen the video yet. And I don't know if this is murder or if this is self-defense of some kind. Mm-hmm. I called it civic self-defense. If it is that, it's not, obviously he wasn't defending himself. That's kind of the issue here.
Yeah.
In part, and maybe it's partly the issue. Wasn't really defending himself. He was defending, he says, basically the whole car of people. Mm-hmm. But what I was going to say, so I don't know. I'd have to see the video. I'd have to see way more to know whether I would consider this murder, or whether it was necessary. But I can say this, having all the experience I do in New York City on the subways for many, many years, for decades now, I immediately assumed when I heard about it, oh yeah, I'm sure this guy needed to be taken down. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, there are psychotic, schizophrenic drug addicts running around loose on the subways. I mean, this happens, and we all know this. Almost every day, in fact, if you like commute on the subway, which I have also done, by the way, a daily commute. I used to do that for a while. And then for years, I commuted 3 times a week on it. I'd spend an hour each way. Pretty much every time I would get on the subway, there'd be one psycho get up on the car and start screaming about stuff. I mean, there was a crazy, chaotic person, every subway trip. Nothing, I never saw anything that was threatening to anyone. I was also living there during the height of the Giuliani era. So when I got there before then, it was a Wild West. But during Giuliani, which is most of when I was there, yeah, nothing ever happened to me, and I never saw anything. But again, but I certainly did see a whole lot of psychosis. And it makes perfect sense to me. I've seen a lot of guys who I imagine this guy to have been, who are, semi-psychotic or psychotic, and they're just sort of career criminal, sadistic thugs. Like they just actually get off on hurting people, and whatever state of mind they're in, that's what they like to do. And this guy's record was like, what, 47 arrests or something like that?
Yeah.
For a lot of assault, I think.
Yeah, a lot of assault.
I mean, there's no doubt. I'm sure I would bet money that he was totally wilding out. This guy's not from New York, right? Is he? The guy who killed him?
He's a New Yorker.
Is he?
Oh,
okay.
Are you talking about the guy who choked him?
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
White boy. And race is all in this, of course.
Well,
if it were reversed, do you think AOC would be calling him a murderer?
Well, here's the thing. There's another video going viral of a happy. I mean, the guy didn't die, which is the big thing in this case. Is that unfortunately Jordan Neely died.
Yeah.
But there's like an exactly identical situation where both people are white, and it's like a happy local news story. Like, oh, a great hero stepped in, and thank you so much.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
but
totally framed differently. Yeah,
but no one died though.
No one died. That's a big. Yeah.
You're going to see more of these, by the way, because of the ubiquity of jujitsu training now. Like so many people train in jujitsu now because of the UFC and Joe Rogan and all that. You're going to see, and this guy clearly knew jujitsu. You're going to see more of that because you can kill someone. It's not that hard actually. If you can get someone in a rear naked, which is not hard at all, you can put their lights out permanently within minutes. It's not hard if you get them in that position. I mean, a lot of fighters have almost died because the referee was slow in tapping. But anyway, yeah. So the bigger question, I guess, is about vigilantism at a time of perceived lawlessness. And I actually think the lawlessness is a bit hyped, even though I've hyped it myself, and I live in one of the worst cities in America right now, in terms of the rise in lawlessness. But I'm not sure. I mean, statistically, it is an increase in these cities, but it's not that big of an increase, and it's nowhere near what it was.
It's nowhere near the 70s and
90s. The early 90s, was when that was the peak actually, post sort of the late crack epidemic era. Late 80s to the early 90s was the worst. That's right when I moved to New York, by the way. Giuliani takes over, and you can see like the year he becomes mayor, I think it's like the year after that, the murder rate just plummets. And it's like, I mean, nationally, because it wasn't just Giuliani, a whole bunch of mayors and chiefs of police adopted all these new tactics and militarized the police, as Radley Balco has written about, and started arresting just lots and lots of people and stuffing the prisons full of these people. This is the crime bill in action. This is Joe Biden. This is his bill. This is law. We now have 2.3 million incarcerated people, but we also have way less crime, even now with this recent uptick. It's nowhere near what it was in the 90s. So thank you, Joe. I mean, it's really weird. Like Joe Biden and Rudy Giuliani, odd bedfellows in this, but that's exactly who did this. What do we tell them? But now, what do we say about them? But then there's this sort of perceived lack of breakdown in law and order recently, and I don't know. I mean, it's certainly not true outside the big cities, right? Crime is about the same nationally, I think.
That depends. I wouldn't be so certain. I think mental health, just in general, is hit a huge impasse due to.
I want to know. I want to know what the crime rates are in other countries, because I want to know how much of this is COVID related.
Yeah.
Lockdown related, I should say.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it certainly was. I mean, the big spike was in 2020.
And now, like, mainstream news outlets are finally addressing that. Hey, maybe this lockdown thing had adverse mental health effects. Maybe.
I know. I'm so sick of COVID talk. I can't even go there anymore. But yeah, I mean, I really, on Twitter, I now don't even read those posts. And if I see that it's about COVID, I just keep scrolling. I don't even read it. I can't.
Yeah. So back to the story, calling it a lynching like Ayanna Pressley has and other race grifters have is kind of the dumber side of critical race theory, essentially, I think.
Yes.
In that, like, you see a black victim and a white perpetrator, and you immediately color it like that, and then you immediately tie it to this long history, and you immediately assign motives to everybody involved.
It's a reductive version of CRT. So it reduces all questions, not just questions of particular law, which is what CRT is about. All questions to the race question. All questions are about race. They do that, and they consider that to be CRT. It's not actually, but yeah, I mean, it's a great ideology for stupid people. I mean, race and racism is, I think Ayn Rand actually said this, to quote her twice now, that it is, I think this is what her critique of racism was, that it's just stupid. It substitutes for actual analysis right? Instead of like trying to understand why something happened, you just say, oh, it's because he was black or because he was white. It's always there. It's always at the ready, and dumb people grab for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, most people, and certainly most Americans, are dumb, at least about politics, about things like this, and so they always reach for the race thing because it's always available.
Mm-hmm. And again, if you invite that question, as I've been seeing happen on Twitter, there's a lot of other crimes that happened where there's a black perpetrator and a white victim, and nobody talks about those, or it galvanizes people on the internet to talk about those. And
don't even get me started, man.
Yeah.
Well, you know about me and that. I mean, every time that happens, I make sure to post it on Twitter, and Facebook and everywhere, and I talk about it on the podcast, and I have guests on about Michael Bell Sr. on, whose son was murdered by the Kenosha police, and no one gives a fuck because he's white. And I had, Danny Shaver's wife, Lainey Sweet, on the show. He was murdered, cold blood on his hands and knees, and no one gives a fuck because they're white. Yeah. That is the most blood curdling thing about the modern left is their absolute just cold heart toward white people's suffering of any kind. It's amazing. I used to be like that a little bit when I was like a leftist, race conscious freak way back in the 90s. I remember feeling that a little bit, like having this sort of cold heart toward white people in general, feeling like they kind of had it coming and they're kind of like boring, kind of like what we were saying earlier, they're kind of boring and uptight and they can't dance and they're soulless and blah, 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 blah. Some of which is sort of true, but like that, of course, it's so ridiculous because I happen to be white. My son's white, maybe it changed when I had my son because I was like, oh, wait, there's a white person who I really care about and I don't want anything bad to happen to him, So then I was like, wait, maybe I should extend that to other white people too. Maybe I should just extend it to all people.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the way to go.
Or how they treat like people in Appalachia as inbred and
yeah. And they, when they hear the word conservative, they see a trucker hat and a hillbilly wearing the trucker hat. I mean, that's that. There's nothing else about that. No. We could go on and on, but the double standard about crime, interracial crime. Oh boy, that is an ugly, ugly thing. And you know what? If you want to like melt the internet and get canceled right away, you want to get canceled right now? Let's do this. So if you want to try to look up, how can I say this without being seen by certain bots? If you try to look up statistics on particular interracial crimes, I'm glad. That's good. I agree. I used to hate white people, but I grew out of that.
Yeah.
If you want to find statistics on interracial crimes, the FBI provides statistics on several different kinds of crimes. You can find the interracial statistics, like how many black people were the perpetrator and how many whites were the victims, and then vice versa. For murder, you can find that. For assault and battery, you can find those numbers, but not for one in particular. Not for one really, really terrible crime. Everyone considers it to be the second worst crime you can commit. You can't find the numbers on that. And I'm going to leave that there. Now, how could that be good that we live in a society that can't actually look at a set of numbers that are pretty important, having to do with the second worst crime one can commit? We all agree on that. There's some numbers relevant to that, and we're not allowed to look at that. Is that a good society to be in? There's no justification for that, is my point. There's no reason why we shouldn't look at that number. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. It's funny. But that joke, I don't hate white people. That's my joke. I'm not a racist. Some of my best friends are white.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah.
Classic. But man, I got flashbacks to hanging out on certain live streams and feeling like I'm in the dark corners of the internet while you're talking about certain crime statistics.
That's true. I know. Well, that's the only place where it can be spoken, because the FBI literally won't release those numbers. They did for a while, and I think you can find them on the Wayback Machine or something like that. But the FBI has the DOJ, the Bureau of, what's it called? Crime Statistics, whatever it's called. Anyway, what's the name of that? Anyway, the FBI's official statistics, like, they scrubbed it. You can't. They no longer list that particular crime in the interracial categories. My goodness. I mean, that just speaks to. But all the other crimes, like, it'd be fine, actually, I think, maybe, if there were no interracial statistics, right? You didn't do that. You didn't count race at all in crimes. I'm actually probably for that. But when you count a whole bunch of crimes according to race, but not this one particular crime.
Yeah.
Come on,
man.
This is corruption.
Yeah.
On an epic scale.
Man, if we were on Zoom, I'd have a certain joke to make. But moving on, we got to talk about the drone that exploded over the Kremlin.
So now people who are new to the show are like, wait, are these guys racist or not racist? I can't even decide what they were like. So they were so non-racist, and now they're like fucking Klansmen. What's happening here?
Yeah,
we're on both sides, right?
We go both ways. Yeah,
we go both ways. We like the racist and the anti-racist. It's true. I do.
It's like that. It's like that meme. Man, the racist community is so warm and accepting. They don't care what race you are, as long as you're also racist. Which,
right,
it's so true. Like, I've bonded with so many people from so many other races by just being racist to whoever their race is.
If you are listening to this or watching this, and you are left wing of any kind or libertarian of any kind, if you consider yourself to be an anti-imperialist, like a critic of the American empire, go look up the Anti-Imperialist League, the Anti-Imperialist League of the turn of the 20th century. They formed in opposition to the Spanish-American War, but to, obviously from their name, the empire in general. They were opposed to the American empire. And go look at who were members of that. It was Mark Twain, who people love to talk about that. Mark Twain is the coolest guy ever. Awesome. One of the founders of the Anti-Imperialist League. But it was also a whole bunch of Southern politicians in the Democratic Party, many of whom were senators and congresspeople, who were segregationists, not just racist. They were racist segregationists. They voted for Jim Crow laws, but they were all anti-imperialist to the bone, big time. So yeah, you have a lot to learn, even from the most evil people, you think, from history. These guys had a lot to say about very important subjects. Maybe they weren't right about segregation, but their worldview was so radically different. This is the point.
Yeah.
The whole worldview is so radically, truly different than the Northern Yankee worldview that became dominant, that they see kind of everything differently. And because they see everything differently, it's inevitable that if you really confront their way of thinking, I'm talking about paleoconservatives, I'm talking about the agrarian so-called movement of the early 20th century with Southern writers who got together and celebrated Southern culture. If you look at actual Confederate intellectuals, if you look at John C. Calhoun, for God's sake, one of the most brilliant intellectuals ever to walk the planet. If you look at that whole tradition, Edmund Burke, the whole thing, Pat Buchanan, another racist and anti-imperialist. And you come from the world I come from, the liberal left, secular, bi-coastal world, you will learn PhD after PhD after PhD worth of knowledge. I mean, it is amazing because it's this entirely different way of seeing the world that we have just never seen growing up in cloistered little colleges and college towns.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's my favorite. That's one of my favorite quotes. I think it was from your interview with Dugan, but one of my favorite Dugan quotes is,
right.
There are two kinds of people. There are two kinds of people who, when they are confronted with new ideas, some of them, they crack open bottle of champagne. Others, they bring pitchforks and torches. Me, I crack bottle of champagne.
Yeah. Oh, man. I got to go back and watch that sometime. Yeah. Epic. Yeah. He was the man. This is a good segue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's renewed discussion about Alexander's daughter Daria, who was, I just found this out. I didn't know this. Apparently the State Department or the DOD, someone in the U.S. government has admitted that Ukraine did kill Daria.
Wow.
and also that the Kerch Bridge, they bombed the Kerch Bridge on the way to Crimea. That also, I think the U.S. has now admitted that Ukraine did that. And then there was another attack on an air base in Russia that's inside Russian territory. So we now have multiple attacks inside Russian territory by Ukraine. And now we have this drone.
Yeah. Can I report it to you the way that Fox News reported it to me while I was listening on the radio?
Okay, Jesus. Yeah.
This is how Fox News reported it to me. A drone exploded over the Kremlin. Putin has made baseless allegations that the United States is involved. Russia continues its war of aggression against Ukraine, bombing civilian targets such as a supermarket. The United States is still committed to supporting Ukraine's defensive position in this war.
And you wonder why they fired Tucker Carlson?
Yeah.
You think it's about anything other than this? I mean, Fox, Rupert Murdoch is known for being all in on this war. And he was not happy with Tucker on this question. Yeah. Imagine for a moment, everyone, this was 2 drones, by the way, 16 minutes apart. Imagine, everyone, 2 drone missiles. These were kamikaze missiles, kamikaze drones. 2 drones that are taken out over the U.S. Capitol by air defense at the last second, and actually nearly strike the flagpole on top of the U.S. That's what happened here.
Real quick, yeah, you have to like culturally understand how significant this building is to like Russians. Like this is where Stalin worked. This is where Khrushchev worked.
Lenin
Lenin
worked there. This was Lenin's original office. Khrushchev, all of them, all the Soviet leaders worked there. This is the center. It's considered to be the center of USSR government and Russian government. Yeah. Still. But I mean, no, but just please, everyone, just think. I know a lot of people listening agree with me on this stuff, but like, just imagine that, like what Americans would call for. Mm-hmm. So here's what's happening right now, Michael. And this is as we're speaking, our fate right now is hinging on what these few men are doing in the Kremlin. Right now, the Russian government is deciding how to respond to this. That's what they're doing. They took a day. They haven't said much of anything about what they're going to do militarily, if anything, in response. But clearly, most intelligent people I've heard from about this say that this was an attempt by Zelensky, by the Ukraine government, to escalate the war. To escalate the war, which will generate more sympathy in the West, to give them more weapons and more money, which is that's the whole story of the war from the beginning. So if Russia chooses this moment to escalate, chooses to respond with an escalation, a significant escalation, then we really are headed to a new place in this war and in this world very quickly. Because simultaneously, as all this is happening, Poland is making serious noises about entering the war and establishing a Polish-Ukrainian hybrid state. That would be, of course, because Poland is a member of NATO. But you would be adding a NATO army to this war. You'd be adding a NATO nation directly into this war. And according to Article 5, if any member of NATO is attacked, all NATO members are obligated to defend them.
Well, Thad, that's obviously a conspiracy theory that has no basis in reality.
It is.
The real reality is that this was a false flag operation that Russia did to itself to escalate the war in their favor.
Yeah, it is a conspiracy theory, which means it's probably right.
Yeah.
Given recent history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's this just incredible idiot named Michael Weiss, who unfortunately is on the Fifth Column a lot. I don't know why they have this guy on. He's this neocon sort of establishment journalist. And he was just tweeting today how the Russians did Nord Stream. It was them. Like he was tweeting about how there's now evidence that the Russian Navy did it, blew up their own pipeline. I mean, it's just, they won't stop. I mean, they just won't stop. They need Vladimir Putin to be the devil. They need Russia to be the great Satan. They need to remove that government from the face of the earth. They need to change Russian culture so that they all cooperate with us. They won't stop until Russia is a member of NATO. That's very, very clear. And That's what everyone needs to know. That's why this war is happening. That's why everything has happened. That's why we all think what we do about Vladimir Putin, and about how he hates gays, and about how he kills journalists, almost all of which is nonsense. It's untrue. All these alleged assassinations, I looked them all up, and I talked to Glenn Deese, and we're going to be releasing that episode tomorrow. It's all nonsense. There's no evidence for these things. And actually, there's a lot of contradictory evidence. I mean, there's no evidence, compelling evidence that Putin assassinated anybody. Maybe he did, but there's just not a single case that is persuasive, especially Navalny. Who's a total fraudster and a racist and all sorts of stuff. But
yeah, there was another drone that exploded near an industrial park that Putin was making an appearance at about a week ago, and it looks like almost the. All right. Well, to me, it looks like a parallel to the whole Operation Mongoose thing, where the CIA was trying to kill Castro, and it looks like Putin might actually be in the crosshairs of the CIA, and that like some incidental death of his might be part of the strategy.
Here's a complicating part of this. So people need to understand what's going on in Russian politics generally. And I'm not like an expert on this particular thing, but I do know this general dynamic that's been going on for a while. People don't realize this. He's portrayed as like, Hitler meets Stalin in Western media, but within Russian politics, Putin gets criticized all the time, and he gets criticized from his right. Like, he's criticized for being too soft on Ukraine. Too soft on Ukraine. I mean, people like are furious at this guy and have been. Dugin is one of them, by the way. Dugin has been very vocal about how Putin is too soft in this war and hasn't gone hard enough.
Yeah,
so Dmitry Medvedev, who used to be president and now he's the head of basically, I think it's like the equivalent of the National Security Council. I think that's what his position is. He's like one of the top 3 people in the government. He used to be kind of like slightly pro-Western and kind of soft on the US, but now he's like a super hardliner, and he's clearly to the right of Putin. So he would be a likely successor. They don't want him because he's going to go even harder. So my point is that the CIA right now actually might not be interested in killing Putin. And a lot of the evidence we've been seeing from the leaked papers recently is that a lot of us have been assuming that the CIA is like tightly connected to everything Ukraine does. But that's not so true. In fact, it looks like the CIA and the State Department are kind of kept in the dark about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and they have to spy on Zelensky. That's what the leaks came out. We have to spy on them to figure out what they're up to.
And they see him as increasingly erratic and rogue. And so the killing of Daria Dugina, for instance, like many of us originally assumed that the CIA at least authorized it, signed off on it. But no, that might have been a rogue operation that the CIA was really pissed off about. And that's what, again, smart people in this world are saying about this drone attack.
Yeah,
is that there's undoubtedly right now in the United States government many people who are furious about this, not happy at all.
That's the problem with the proxy war.
Right. You can't always control what they do, what the proxy does.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, we're running short on time. We got a super chat, and I could really have to pull your leg to talk about how much you hate the Kennedys. But can you tell us why you hate the Kennedys?
Handsome men. I gotta say, in college, we brought the dead Kennedys to my school to perform there, and it was one of the greatest moments ever. Jello Biafra broke his leg during the performance and hopped around on one foot for the whole show, for the whole set.
Oh, real quick,
yes.
Since you brought up the dead Kennedys, I'll bring him up again. David Allen Coe, greatest country songwriter ever. The Dead Kennedys recorded one of his songs. Do you know what it is?
Oh, no.
Yeah. The classic American tune, Take This Job and Shove It.
Oh, Johnny Paycheck.
Johnny Paycheck recorded it, but
gotcha.
Some guy in Nashville wrote it, and that some guy in Nashville is David Allen Coe.
I didn't know the DKs did that. The last great punk band, by the way. Now Jello Biafra loves Hillary Clinton, so we don't talk about him anymore. But
also, like, good on the Dead Kennedys for like recording a piece of redneck culture and as loud as possible, beautifully. Working class united. Yeah,
DKs, man. Back in the day, in the 70s and 80s, the DKs had the best politics.
Yeah.
California Uber Alles is the most brutal takedown of the Democratic Party you've ever heard. Way worse than Donald Trump. I mean, they just smashed Jerry Brown. They smashed all of liberalism. It's so awesome. That's the greatest song ever. So that Halloween, that year that we brought the dead Kennedys to my college to perform, my friend and I, who were the two kind of preppy looking guys in my college, it was a hippie school. We were the only guys who kind of looked like preppy and kind of clean cut. We had, we wore black suits with skinny black ties and white shirts. And we had our girlfriends paint with makeup fake like bullet holes with blood coming out of our temples and blood streaming down our cheeks. We were the dead Kennedys. So that's what I have thought about the dead Kennedys since I was a very young man. How's that for apostasy?
Yeah.
American apostasy, boy, like making, well, you know, Jello Biafra started this by calling his band the Dead Kennedys, but, which by the way, tells you everything about his politics, right?
Yeah.
Back then he's not anymore, this person, but yeah.
That really scared middle America back then. Like,
yeah, it should have.
Yeah.
It should have. So my first book, which is a history of really the labor movement and the politics of labor in the United States in the middle of the 20th century. It's nominally about Jimmy Hoffa, but it's really about general labor politics. About half that book's about Robert F. Kennedy, and some of it's about John too. But Robert F. Kennedy was kind of the leader of the sort of anti-crime movement in the government at the time, and he was kind of the Giuliani of his time, Bobby Kennedy, and went after a bunch of the mob bosses, and a lot of the mob was in the unions, and so we went after the unions for being corrupt with the mob, and I studied the Teamsters who were most notorious. And Jimmy Hoffa, who was the president, Bobby Kennedy hated Jimmy Hoffa with this obsession and wrote a whole book about him and was obsessed with him. Finally took him down, sent him to prison after about a decade of prosecution and attacks on Hoffa. But anyway, Bobby Kennedy started his career in politics, people don't know this, on the HUAC committee. He was the counsel for the HUAC committee, the Red Scare anti-commie committee that, you know, we all know and love as the greatest enemy of civil liberties in modern American history. Bobby Kennedy smashed a whole bunch of perfectly fine labor unions permanently because they had some people in there who were not just communists, but just left wing, and might have maybe been sympathetic to communism. Smashed a lot of good unions that were, you know, might have had some people in it who were, yes, somehow attached to some kind of criminal group or something, but it wasn't like run by the mafia by any means. Really authoritarian, hated rock and roll. He and his brother put on these Senate hearings in the 1950s with Barry Goldwater. No kidding, examining the evils of rock and roll. I kid you not. And examining what the government should do to control rock and roll. And about 30 different cities across the country after this banned rock and roll. Bobby Kennedy. Yeah. That old, like laughable, comical Puritan anti-rock and roll figure from the 1950s. Bobby Kennedy was like the fucking archetype of that. And we haven't even gotten to the 60s when he really gets going. You know, I mean, they were hawks. Bobby and Jack were both arch hawk, red Cold Warriors. I mean, they produced way more nuclear weapons than had ever been produced. They both basically reinvented the Green Berets, the special forces, and made special forces like central in the military for the first time. That was John F. Kennedy with Bobby. Bay of Pigs, that was both their ideas. Complete disaster. Vietnam went from a few hundred military advisors to 15,000 soldiers on the ground under the Kennedys. Yeah, he's a scumbag, actually. And he they finally took him a while to support the civil rights movement. Took him years. Martin Luther King was constantly cajoling the Kennedys to get involved, especially Bobby Kennedy, because he was attorney general. Bobby Kennedy was like, fuck, no, we don't want anything to do with this. And it wasn't until they started making crazy shit on the streets with the dogs and the fire hoses. And these guys said, okay, we're going to support the civil rights movement. Why? Because right then pictures of dogs and fire hoses being loosed on these black people in the streets of America were being shown on the television sets in Africa. Right then, when the Soviets were moving into Africa and trying to take control. And the U.S. was trying to win over the Africans to our side in the Cold War. That's all the Kennedys cared about. They were arch Cold Warriors, just like these Democrats today. arch cold warriors. Russia was everything to these guys. That's why they supported the civil rights movement, because it was embarrassing our efforts in the Cold War in Black Africa. We looked really, but no Black African was going to join us against the Soviets if we're chewing up Black children with dogs in the street. So these are cynical, imperialist, militaristic, vicious, authoritarian motherfuckers. And the CIA did not kill John F. Kennedy. It was most likely a little rogue outfit in the CIA in the Miami field office that was pissed off about personnel decisions that Kennedy made after the Bay of Pigs. It was not, he did not attack the CIA overall. The CIA was totally down with the Kennedys. You can look at the director of the CIA at the time was totally a Kennedy man. No. The CIA loved him because he was ramping up the war, and he was ramping up the Cold War, and he was ramping up the American military presence around the world and all the bases. That's all Kennedy. And Bobby was right with him all the way through it. They never differed on any issue. And Bobby was right by his brother's side his entire political career, basically being his henchman, like carrying out everything. He was the one who was at the front lines of making sure policy got enacted and enforced and all that. So no, fuck the Kennedys.
Bobby Jr. He's getting attention still. I want to talk about him in that, like, I think, well, Michael Tracy, for the first part, just to bring this up, has been digging through RFK's very public past.
I know.
And, this guy, surprise, RFK.
Crazy's crazy.
Hillary Clinton at every opportunity that he ever had. He's been a close family friend of Joe Biden for 40 plus years. His campaign is nothing personal. His award has been given to both Biden, and it's been given to Fauci. He's very much in with the deep state. He just has very, very specific criticisms where if he were in charge and if he were running things, he'd run things better, is basically where RFK is coming from.
Right.
So in the Democratic primary, I think it's a good thing to just have as much dialogue as possible.
Oh, yeah.
And for any challenger to go after the main hegemon of Biden is great, I think. But do you think potentially that for us in the alternative space, do you think it's a distraction necessarily, or that, like,
no, it's good.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I have major reservations about him. I'm quite skeptical about him. I just saw his interview with, I think it was Bill Maher, and he's talking about he's talking about the history of the Democratic Party and how historically the Democratic Party has been the party against war and for civil liberties. I swear to God, I was like, okay. I mean, I can't take you seriously. I mean, come on, man. Like, that's ridiculous. What do you mean? Like, look at every war of the 20th century. I mean, what are we talking about? Every war basically was a Democrat war, every major war. And civil liberties, Woodrow Wilson, Franklin Roosevelt, what? Hello, we know this. Like, they crushed civil liberties. Democrats at the Truman was even worse. I mean, he launched the Red Scare again. Yeah, Bobby Jr., first of all, he is not at all serious about the legacy of his party or his family. He's not a serious person when he's talking about them. I don't know. And the way he talks about his uncle and his father is just the opposite, like, of what is true. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, these guys were warmongers. They were imperialist warmongers, like, straight up. Look at Jack's campaign against Eisenhower. That was the whole theme of the campaign, was that Eisenhower was too soft on the commies, and we needed a bigger military and a more aggressive military, and we needed to take the commies on directly, roll back instead of containment. Jesus, and more nuclear weapons. John F. Kennedy ran on more nuclear weapons, everybody. That was like a central part of his campaign. Eisenhower had allowed the nuclear missile gap, is what Kennedy kept saying over and over and over again in 1960. And he won. And what did he do? He built more nuclear missiles, ramped up the arsenal. Like, fuck these guys. What are we talking about? These anti-war people that I know who are excellent people otherwise, like, really, really smart. I'm not going to name names, but some of them are like some of the smartest people in news analysis, like what we do. They've been talking mad, stupid shit about the Kennedys being these, like, peace lovers who were going to end the war in Vietnam. No, they were not. They started the war in Vietnam, essentially. I mean, I understand there were American troops before, but it wasn't a war really until the Kennedys came to town and sent 15,000 young men there. That was And combat helicopters.
Yeah.
Those notorious combat helicopters in Vietnam. Everyone's seen film footage of that strafed peasants in their villages. Those were the Kennedys sent those in. That was their idea. They invented the Green Berets specifically to fight in the jungles of Vietnam. Fuck those guys. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why Oliver Stone started this with his dumbass movie claiming that the CIA killed him because Kennedy was going to stop the war in Vietnam. Okay. And then that got into the heads of all these intellectuals out there who are really good on so many things and really anti-war, but they just lose their fucking minds when it comes to John F. Kennedy and Bobby too. They love these guys because Bobby finally came out against the war when he started running for president way in 1968, when everybody was against the war, by the way. Took a dude a while to get there, but only because he knew he couldn't win without being anti-war. Mm-hmm. And because of that, they think, oh my God, these guys were like Scott Horton running for president or Ron Paul or something. Like, no, these were the opposite. Oh, my Lord of mercy. Yeah. I can't with these fucking Kennedy people. Yeah, but like really smart people. And now they're doing the same thing with RFK Jr. Mm-hmm. And they're just refusing to look at what he said about like putting climate skeptics in prison. That's what he said many times. He wants the Koch brothers to be in prison.
And
authoritarian, just like his pops and his aunt.
If you're truly anti-vax, RFK Jr. is comfortable with vaccine mandates if they pass a more rigorous approval rating. So he's bad on civil liberties in the vaccine question. Like I've heard him talk that you'd be cool with a vaccine mandate if the vaccine was tested for mercury the same way that other drugs are. Yeah, if they were good.
Good vaccine.
Yeah. Right. So again, he totally believes in the supreme authority of the federal government in all instances.
Two things run in the blood of Kennedys: alcohol and authoritarianism. Every one of them, like they're all like that. It's a thing in the family. No, it's true.
It's funny, the thing about Kennedy, like people talk about JFK being such a hero, like saving us from the Cuban Missile Crisis. But like for me, it's my same criticism with Lincoln. Like the Cuban Missile Crisis would never happen if there was no JFK to begin with. Like if
exactly. Somebody, who do you think was running the show then? Yes. Well, the Bay of Pigs people. I mean, God, the most ridiculous, murderous, crazy, and the things that he authorized the CIA to do against Castro.
Yeah.
Come on. Mm-hmm. That was all Kennedy stuff.
Yeah.
The really crazy blowing up cigars, assassinate Castro shit in this early 60s. That was Kennedy.
Mm-hmm. Man, the best presidents are the ones you haven't heard of. They're the ones that you forget about, the ones you're not taught about, the ones who did nothing, the ones who died and did nothing. Well, it's the ones who just like competently ran the federal government without running up the debt and didn't introduce any new plans Garfield, Coolidge,
Well, Garfield, wasn't he the one the shortest lived, the shortest tenure? Didn't he die like just a few months in? I think
there's William Henry Harrison who died.
It was Harrison. Yeah. But Garfield was right there too. I think Garfield was just real quick.
as a Hoosier, William Henry Harrison is a point of pride for us. And,
right. Definitely the greatest president is Harrison.
Greatest president, most libertarian president.
No doubt about it. Just the greatest. That's all you have to say. Just the greatest.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when people ask, don't say anything.
Yeah.
When people ask why, don't say anything. Just let them think about it.
Yep.
Don't say anything, right? Because there's laws about saying such things. I'm just even suggesting you'll get a visit from the FBI, bro.
Yeah.
Be careful.
No, he's a Hoosier. That's why.
That's why we love him.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to go, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Icarus Fest.
IcarusFest.com.
Kurt Metzger is headlining the comedy night at Icarus Fest. Big announcement. And we have a whole comedy show with Lou Perez, Danny Polishuk, and Dan Naderman.
Yeah.
Naderman. Sorry, yeah. A veteran New York comic. But yeah, this is really exciting. We just added this for Friday night. You can buy a separate ticket for that, or you can buy full festival tickets at IcarusFest.com. And then we also have just an insane lineup of speakers and podcasters. Some of we've actually mentioned tonight. We have Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate, Sam Husseini, Michael Tracy. We've talked about him. He'll be there. We got Jeffrey Tucker, Jeff Schullenberger from Compact Magazine. Been on Unregistered many times. Brilliant dude. Clint Russell from Liberty Lockdown is coming. Also, Ben Burgess will also be there. And we're
all
having
the people I plagiarized for this show: Michael Tracy, Clint Russell. They're all going to be there.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Right. No, of course, this is why they're coming. And we have a film festival. We're going to be showing some classic, taboo, and canceled films, including. Oh, and then I didn't mention, of course, Jack Mason of the Perfume Nationalist will be a featured speaker throughout the festival, and he'll be doing some amazing film analysis during the film festival of Gone with the Wind in particular, the most canceled, greatest work of art ever, according to Jack and according to us, and means a whole lot. So yeah, it's blowing up. We just also added merch. We have some very cool t-shirts, coolest t-shirts I've ever seen for like a festival like this. No, like for real. And we're going to have an amazing zine coming out any day now, also for the festival, which is going to be a work of art. We're working with an artist who's helping us organize this at the Williams Center in Rutherford. And that's why we have all this cool merch and stuff and a cool website. And it's pretty awesome. So yeah, do it. Get your tickets and we'll see you there. If you want to join us, Michael and me, for some crazy debauchery after Unreported every Thursday night, we go to Unregistered Live, which is a Zoom meeting for our patrons. And if you want to be a patron and join us, and you can be a patron at any level to get the URL, go to patreon.com/unregistered, not unreported, unregistered, and join up at any level and come and hang out. And you can be totally anonymous. You don't have to show your name or face or anything. All right, man. Thank you. Awesome job. The best.
It was fun. Yeah. See you.
Yeah, man. All right.
Bye.